Hi folks, hope you're all good. Just thought I'd talk to you about an alternative voting system for the UK that I've thought of. It's a bit similar to one I came up with 9 years ago. And the reason I was thinking 9 years ago about this subject is because it was a general election then of 2015, which was won by David Cameron's Conservative Party. And now it's another election. In fact, it's election day today. And I've already made a video urging people to vote Green. I'll be voting Green, and I gave my reasons in a previous video. But I hope as many people vote Green as possible. And, well, the election today is another subject. But, okay, so my alternative voting system would be as follows. The voters would put the electoral parties in, the political parties rather, in preference order, and they wouldn't have to write down a local, it wouldn't be anything to do with choosing a local candidate as it currently is. And they put the parties in order, and we do an instant runoff vote, which is also known in the UK as alternative vote election of that. So the way that works briefly is that the it's multiple round. You have multiple rounds of this process. In the first round, we look at the first preference votes of all the parties, and the least popular one is eliminated. Then those votes switch to the second preference. Then we have another round, and the least popular in that round, those get eliminated, and we move to the second or third preference votes for those ones, and eventually we get to a last round where I think it's the last round is when we get 50% of the votes going for one party. I believe it could be something slightly different, but anyway, something roughly along those lines. So that would be how we would, and then so the one that wins that would become the government. They'd get the prime minister and the cabinet and all that stuff, and the executive kind of powers. Then, so another part of this is how does Parliament, the members of Parliament, would be a very different system to now, I suggest. So I think in my last video 9 years ago, I believe was the same as what I've said so far. But the next bit is different. So what I'm suggesting now is currently we have 650 constituencies in the UK. Those are little patches of land. Each one gets a member of Parliament. So what I suggest is we switch it so there's just 65 constituencies. So each constituency is made up of 10 current constituencies. But we still have 10 members of Parliament for that place. We have the same number of members of Parliament, but for each constituency, there's just one member of Parliament for each party. So, and we have 10 of the 10 most popular parties in the country. So Parliament would then always be made up of 65 members of Parliament. I'm talking about the House of Commons, the lower house here. Would be made up of 10, would always have 65 rather members of each of the 10 parties, making a total of 650 members of Parliament in total. But the way the votes, they wouldn't have equal numbers of votes. At the moment, they all get one vote each in Parliament. which seems fair enough. But under my system, there'd be a whole. I'm not sure exactly what the number of votes would be, but it'd be larger numbers. It'd be like thousands of votes going rather than just 650. And okay, so the half the votes that they use in Parliament, these are the votes to vote on each like piece of legislation or whatever. Half those votes would be given to the government, and then the rest, the opposition benches, as we call it here, would be distributed in proportion to the number of first votes that all those losing parties, the other 9 parties that are not the government, got. And also, the votes would be distributed between the 65 members of each party in proportion to the number of votes that were cast for that party in each constituency. So if we got these, you imagine the 65 members of a certain party, and if the party is really popular in one constituency, then that member will get more proportionally more votes than than their colleagues. So, what is the reason for this? Why do I think this is better? Well, it has a bunch of advantages over the current system, I think. So, one major advantage is that we wouldn't have hung parliaments. So, hung parliaments are a bit messy. This is like when there's a draw where no party gets more than half the chamber. It People say this kind of system does work in other countries, but I don't really like it because we get a lot of coalitions and things, and it tends to be all a big backroom sort of deal. I think it's better that the voters get the party that they like the best. So we have one coherent plan. Admittedly, it will sort of shift around when we get new governments. Oh, I should add, sorry, before I argue further for the system, I forgot to mention a clever little idea I've had with the system is that we don't really have to have election days in my system. So a person can have their preference order, they cast their vote. I hope probably online is probably the best way to do it. But then that vote can just stand forever if the voter doesn't want to change it. So I think that would be really good. So it'd be basically, this system's less hassle for the voter. That's a major, going back to the advantages, like arguing for it, I guess. That's a major advantage, I think, for arguing for change into this system, because the people who want the status quo always seem to argue, oh, it'd be terribly complicated to put it in preference order. Well, this would be simpler, really, because it is just a party, so you don't have to worry about your local candidate. I mean, you can look at your local candidate. Obviously, there's an element of local representation in this system, but you don't have to worry about that. You can just put the parties in preference order and just leave it like that for like 20 years if you want. I guess if a party like stops existing, then that would just be cancelled off automatically from your vote. So that would be a lot simpler. And the other major advantage of this system, which is true of all instant runoff things, is that we don't get split votes so much. So it gets rid of like, this tactical voting and split votes and stuff. So if the left has got the left of politics has like 2 parties and the right has one, we won't automatically see the one right wing party win just because of this fact that there is one party on the right and 2 on the left, or vice versa. So, and you don't have to worry about people don't have to worry about like not voting for the smaller parties because they're gonna let the enemy big party in. They don't have to worry about that sort of thing. You just put your favorite party first, put your next favorite next, and it will just all work out. Because you'll be putting your favorite of the bigger parties ahead of the other one, and that will, when a push comes to shove in the later rounds of this thing, that would just count as a vote for the major party you prefer to the other one. I think that's most of the arguing for it, Dan. A last point is in the UK we have the House of Lords, a higher, it's called an upper chamber, where it's a less powerful chamber. And the House of Lords doesn't do a whole lot these days. It just is able to delay legislation, as far as I can see. I think that's it. Possibly suggest amendments. I don't know. Or maybe even not do that. I think it's just, it kind of just is an extra bunch of eyeballs on this legislation as it's going through Parliament. Usually more conservative eyes on these things. I think I think it would be hard to introduce a major reform of the House of Commons without a reform of the House of Lords, which everybody's been talking about for years and is a total no-brainer, basically. So I think the best thing for the House of Lords would be that, or the kind of simplest way to keep it sort of what it is, but get rid of the crapness, the worst elements of it, is just to make it just kick out all the lords who are politicians, basically, and just keep the ones who are not politicians, or in the rare case who might have been independent politicians all along. But I'm not sure there are any like that, to be honest. So there are plenty of independent people in the House of Lords, but they were all the ones who were politicians were to do with parties before, I think. So that would leave, I think, only a couple of hundred lords. So we can add, I guess we can create more lords. But also to keep them independent, and this might be controversial, is we could just make it a self-selecting thing. So basically, when you could have, I think we should have the lords just sit for they have a maximum stay of 5 or 10 years or something, to give a chance to new people. But then when they leave, they like select. Well, I was thinking when some subset of them select, because it'd be a lot of hassle for them all to select the new members all the time, because they'd be doing it every week or something. But basically, when a bunch of them leave, like some subset of them gets to vote and pick a new lord. I'm against having like titles like lord, by the way. I'd give it all different names. You could call it the I don't know, the upper chamber or the revising chamber, or a million other names are better than the House of Lords, because not a house, and there shouldn't be such a thing as a lord, I think. But that's a minor point. And I think there was one other thing I was going to say. So doing a Joe Biden here. So forget it now. It can't have been that important. Anyway, I hope you like my proposal. All the best.